We managed to get the coffee just a bit late, the speaker just in time, and I think most of your family is here too. But this is the second in our series of what else is being done in science in Valencia. We've had Professor Eugenio Barronado from the Molecular Science Institute. Today it's the turn of Professor Juan Lerma of the Neuroscience Institute in Alicante. It's another distinguished institute, Severo Ochoa, and it does the science that started in Spain with Ramón y Cajal. So we've had the two names of the Nobel Prize winners that Spain has had so far. We'll see who the third is. Today we'll hear what has happened to the field that Ramón y Cajal started in the last 100 years. I hope it's an interesting introduction. Please, Professor Lerma.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. I think it's not the first time that I come, but it's a real pleasure because, you know, to talk about our passion to people not directly related with the topic that we are working on is not only a pleasure but also a challenge. And you know the scientists love challenges. Yes. So I think that that's interesting. I mean, the name of the next Nobel Prize, Spanish Nobel Prize, may be Valencia. If somebody wants to know more, just please ask me. So let's start with this. I guess you are seeing some movement over there. Are you? Do you see? I mean, if you go up and down, you can see that it moves. But actually it doesn't. It's just an invention of your brain. So your brain is cheating you. It's not happening. Same thing with this, right? Is it moving? Can you see it? It's not moving. Your brain is continually cheating. So if I ask you what is this, you probably say maybe a fork, maybe a sword, something like that. And probably it is. But if we make a rearrangement of these elements, which are very simple, you can just start figuring out what this can be. And you know, with that simplicity, your brain is telling you what's getting a lot of information. So this is a woman, is it? And this is, I guess, young woman. So how the brain does to extract so much information from, you know, so few details. So you look at this cross, that maybe you cannot see it. So keep your eyes on this. You will see that the figures are totally distorted. But if you look at the figures, so the faces are familiar, are not modified, they are normal. So your brain again is cheating you. You can, or your brain is seeing something that doesn't exist, and you believe obviously what you're saying. So and this is the protagonist. So this is a bit ugly, I guess, but this is the machine that is telling you how to feel, is making you to think, is making you to love, etc., etc. So it's about 80,000 million neurons, very well organized, and very, forming a very complex organ. An organ that works like a machine with a kind of perfection that you can imagine. And actually, this machine needs sometimes maintenance and needs also repayment because it's not perfect, and sometimes it breaks down. So the problem of these diseases is a serious, very serious burden, because it's costing about 800 billion in Europe. So, I mean, this is a breakdown of the different diseases, of the cost of these diseases, but perhaps the most important thing is that this is the cost, the annual cost that is dedicated from the European Union to treat diseases affecting the nervous system. As I said, is 800 billion. This is the number of individuals in Europe affected by a disease of the brain, which is accounting for 35% of the total diseases, or the total people affected by a disease, general, any disease. And however, Europe is dedicating few more than 3 million per year to the study of the nervous system. This is a totally unfair situation, and I think from the political point of view, it's a tremendous mistake. And we are trying to convince politicians, decision makers in Brussels, that they have to tackle the situation, because this is very serious. So this is more than cardiovascular diseases and cancer together. So you know, understanding the brain is an urgent task. It's an urgent issue, because we have to get some relief and some expectation for these, some hope for these millions of people affected in Europe. And actually, this is another calculation. Every 7 seconds, somebody in the world develops a dementia. This is tremendous. So the number of people committing suicide is calculated. I mean, this is totally unbelievable. So we are, I mean, and the problem of the brain and the disease in the brain, diseases of the brain don't kill you. Just remove your personality, destroy you, but you're still alive, and then you are consuming a lot of resources. So anyway, let's talk about the healthy brain, because fortunately we are more with healthy brains, hopefully, than with a brain with a disease. And obviously I'm going to focus this talk, you know, within the field in which I am an expert, rather than, because obviously, as I said, the brain is very complex, and the fields within the neuroscience are complex, and not everybody are proficient in every field. So this is a neuron that we put in culture, in a petri dish, and the neurons, under these conditions grow, and you see there are prolongations, and there are these dots. This is obviously expressing a protein which is fluorescent, so the whole cell is fluorescent. The 3 people that discovered this protein that is fluorescent and that actually was isolated from medusa, jellyfish. They got Nobel Prize a number of years ago, because this technique, just to be able to label cells and to follow all the processes, etc., has been tremendously useful in understanding many aspects of cell biology of the neuron. So when you see these spots are called dendritic spines, and is where there is a kind of miracle every single second, because neurons communicate each other through these structures. So this is using one super resolution microscope, was recently developed, and you know that curiously enough, the person developing this super microscope this technology received the Nobel Prize of Chemistry rather than Physics. That is, he's a Nobel Prize anyway. So, and you can see that these dendritic spines are different in size, and the neck is more or less long, etc., etc. So, and this is where neurons communicate with each other. So this is two dendrites coming from human brain, and there is a difference. And actually, this is a drawing by Ramón y Cajal that is kept in the Cajal Institute. And you can see that, I mean, with the microscope he had at that time, more than 100 years ago, he was not very bad, predicting the structure. And you can see the spines, some long, some short, with different shapes. Pretty much the same thing that we saw right here, right? Amazing. So the difference between this and this is that this belongs to a young guy and this belongs to an old guy. And this is a problem because there is something in these spines that make you as you are. So it's probably a good idea to try to keep these spines as healthy as possible. Because if we lose these spines, we lose memory, lose cognition, and lose everything. And this is something that has been proven not long time. So as I said, in that point, the synaptic transmission, the communication from one neuron to other happens, and then this allows the formation of circuits. And this is also 3 drawings by Cajal. This belongs to, I think it's a cortex from the reptiles, so a primitive cortex in the brain. This is the cerebellum, and the cerebellum is exactly the circuit in the cerebellum is exactly the same in humans, in Nobel Prizes, and in rats. It's exactly the same. And this is the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is a structure in the brain which has been traditionally linked to memory and cognition. This is important, and it's known that if you lesion this structure, you lose the capacity to learn. So you can just meet somebody, and in 5 minutes you forget that you have met this person. But the point here is that these are the famous Cajal arrows, in which we don't know why or how he figured out the flux of information in the brain. And sometimes it might be easy, like in the retina, for instance. Obviously, information is coming from outside, but in the cerebellum it's not that easy. So, however, he thought that the information is coming through 2 ways. These are the climbing fibers, or the mossy fibers, and these are the climbing fibers that are just making connection with these cells. Forget about it. So it's making connections with these cells, which are the Purkinje cells that have a very typical anatomy. They are drawn here, like this, but actually, if we could rotate the neuron, would be like that, with like a flat but very, very profuse tree. So anyway, I mean, the information comes from these 2 ways, is integrated, you see, and then is going out from the cerebellum through this axon, that is the axon or the prolongation of the Purkinje cell. Same thing happens in the cortex. Information comes here, there is some computational activity here, and then the information goes out. And in the hippocampus, this is very interesting because it's a layered structure, and you see that the information comes from here, connects with these neurons, which are dendritic cells, granular cells. The granular cells send a prolongation that make contacts with these other cells, which are called CA3 cells, or cornus ammonis 3 cells. At the same time, the prolongation of the cells go out, but also there is an association of prolongation that contacts with these other cells, which are called CA1, or cornus ammonis 1 cells, etc. And then this is a kind of processing circuits amazingly nice, and then the information once processed goes out. That was a mistake by Cajal, maybe the only mistake that has been recognized, because the most of the prolongations of these cells are not going that way, but going that way back to the cortex. But I mean, I think this exit exists, but it's not the main exit. So this is, as I tell you, we will see how this structure is involved in behavior, whatever, in an example that I want to show you. But the point is that the synapse allows connectivity between neurons, and this is making the sense of the brain. Because if you disconnect neurons from each other, the brain stops working. So and this is a scheme from a synapse that as you see is a quite complex structure. So this is the presynaptic terminal, and this is the postsynaptic terminal. And to, just to illustrate the point, this is the presynaptic terminal, which is having these vesicles which are filled with a substance, with a chemical substance, which is the neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitter is released, and then this transmitter crosses a gap and then activate a number of proteins which are postsynaptic receptors, just in charge of detecting this neurotransmitter. You see, this is very complex, and actually this is a micrograph from EM, from electron microscopy, and you can see these vesicles and this density, which is just reflecting the accumulation of proteins there, because every receptor have a number of proteins which are just participating in the signaling and is participating in holding the receptors in position and modifying the properties of this receptor. So I can tell you that my lab is working maybe 20 years already on this guy, this protein, which is called kainate receptor. So the most important neurotransmitter, excitatory neurotransmitter, that once it released is activating the postsynaptic cell, is glutamic acid. And glutamic acid, as you may know, is a quite simple amino acid that is everywhere, particularly in the Chinese food. And that's why, because it's giving somehow this flavor that or taste that we like very much, which is called umami. That means in Japanese delicious. So the cheese, dry tomatoes, a number of food are very, very rich in glutamate. So if you have a problem in your brain, in the blood-brain barrier, then the blood that is having a lot of glutamate, after eating, you increase the concentration of glutamate in your blood, then some glutamate crosses this barrier and then get into the brain parenchyma, and then you have a problem, which is called the syndrome of the Chinese food. No? But the brain managed to make this simple amino acid the coin with which to excite the neuron and transmit information from one neuron to the other. So, and this kind of receptor is one of the types of receptors that are receiving and detecting this the release of glutamate. We will see it. But I mean, the idea is that this is very, very complex. So, and actually this is just a recreation of one of the vesicles, and you can see that there are a number of proteins in this vesicle just in charge of trafficking this vesicle to the right place, to interact with membrane proteins, just to allow the vesicle to fuse with the membrane and to produce the release of neurotransmitter. And this is happening in milliseconds. So that's why I said that this is a kind of miracle, because this is working continuously and without failures. If there is a failure of this machine, then we have a problem. So anyway, let me tell you, this is a recording that is just detecting the activation of this postsynaptic cell, and actually is one of each one of these event, this is current, is inward current that is entering through the receptors in one single spine. So then you can wonder, how is it possible to record from one cell something so small? Because it's just the activation of a vesicle, is a release of a vesicle activating a single spine that a cell has. Well, this is accomplished by a technique which is called patch clamp. And actually you can see here, this is a section brain. So we took a rat brain, we sectioned, make and slice. And then this is under the microscope of infrared light and Nomarsky, and then you can see the field, the layer of neurons in the hippocampus. I said that the hippocampus is a layer, the structure, so you can see how the cells are accumulated in this layer. And this is a glass pipette that is filled with an electrolyte and is recording from this particular neuron, which dendrite is extending over here, as you can see. So every event of this is just being recorded by this pipette through a technique which is called patch clamp, that was developed by two Germans, Erwin Neer and Fred Sackmann. Got the Nobel Prize in, when was it? I just came back from the States, 1990 or something like that. And there is an anecdote because they like very much Spain, they come very often. And Erwin Neer was in Seville and was looking somebody in the University of Seville recording with this technique. And there was a picture of the Macarena, the Virgin. And he asked my friend Juanjo, what is this? And Juanjo, that is a civilian, typical civilian, said, oh, she is very, she makes miracle and improve my recordings when I do. That's why I have it in my setup. And she said, oh, that's something totally. And then, at the lunchtime, and Juanjo always says exactly the same, at the lunchtime, he went to Basilica La Macarena, and a few months later, he got the Nobel Prize. So anyway, so to do this kind of recordings, seems to be very sophisticated, but sophistication in science maybe not that word. This is a typical equipment in which we can do this kind of recordings so precise and so nice. So as you see, this is liquids coming down and perfusing the slides, which is there with a microscope. Everything is with tape, and as you know, that is not very fancy equipment. So it's essentially a bricolage. There is maybe 80% bricolage and 20% technology in this thing. Anyway, so what are the challenges in the 21st century? And we have to consider, in terms of neuroscience, where the 20th century has been a spectacular century for neuroscience. Starting from Cajal and ending from the patch clamp and other techniques. So they have been an amazing increase in knowledge, and we know a lot. And now we are in this situation. So we know at the genetic level that we have specific receptors, as I said, and they are targets for pharmacological substances. At this same genetic level, we have recognized a number of mutations and variabilities in our genome, and some alterations generated by epigenetics. So the environment is changing our genome and making changes. And then it's just impinging or affecting the level of molecular and cellular that I mentioned. Also in vivo, these are transgenic mice in which they are expressing this protein, which is green. And you see that the mice, this is the normal mice, and these are a transgenic mouse which has been transfected with these green fluorescent proteins, so they are green. But then, for instance, allows you to follow these cells in a given environment. And then we are now just trying to correlate how is the behavior and how the genetics may affect the behavior, how can be at the level of molecular, at the level of cells, how this activity is just modifying also the behavior. And obviously this is affecting at the level of organ, which is the most complex system, the most complex levels we understood, and this is probably the problem that the 21st century is just approaching. How is this organ, the whole brain, working? And you see here two techniques, PET and fMRI, that is allowing to study the brain because they are non-invasive techniques, and is allowing to study the brain, the human brain, without, you know, a necessity to open school. So, but then, I mean, the knowledge that has been, is being accumulated then is making, you know, a number of indication about the basis of behavior, of how addictive behaviors can be generated, or the antisocial behavior, which is a problem for the social. How, for instance, the education system should be designed to try to get the best from this machine, because if we know how this machine learns, then the educational system should be designed to optimize learning. And then another problem posed by this information is about the civic responsibility. Is a sick brain, I mean, is a person having a sick brain responsible for their behavior or not? So if somebody kills somebody, then I think it is just indicating that the brain is not working properly. Because the brain has been designed to preserve your integrity and to preserve the species. And that's why the brain is that way, because from an evolutionary point of view, it has been very, very successful. So I mean, a lot of ethical implications that is under discussion now. But let me show you an example. For instance, this is a study analyzing genes related with the synaptic, with the synapse, with synaptic transmissions. So and this has been analyzed in schizophrenic patients with schizophrenia, and in control subjects. So if they are exactly the same at level of degree of expression, this should follow, and they should follow the diagonal, right? However, you see that there are some genes that are more expressed in the schizophrenic patients, and some others which are less expressed in the schizophrenic patients than in control subjects. So all these genes, you can see the colors there, are related with this wonderful structure which is the synapse. And then that makes, or have made, people think that the schizophrenia is actually a synaptopathy. It's a problem with the synapse. It's a problem with the communication of neurons. And I'm going to try to illustrate you that this might be the case, not only with schizophrenia, but probably with any disease, brain disease. So, as I said, I don't know what it is. So this is the topic in which I mean to study this structure, this tiny structure, is the interest, at least in my group, and part of the Neuroscience Institute is working on this problem as many other centers in the world, and actually it's a quite competitive field. So let me tell you something. For instance, going back to the receptors that are just sensing the release of the neurotransmitter, and this is a subunit. I mean, this is a gene, Greek 4, that is coding for a subunit, which is taking part of the receptor, or kinase receptor, the receptor that I told you that I'm interested in for a number of years. So these people from Edinburgh found that this gene has two variants, in which in one there is a deletion, and in the other there is an insertion. And this is normal. 50% of the population, 50% of the human population have the deletion, and the other 50 has the insertion. But they found this difference because one of these variance protects against bipolar disorder. So people having the deletion, I don't remember if this is the deletion or the insertion, are more protected than the other half for developing bipolar disorders. But I don't think this is the problem. I mean, the thing that seems to be affecting these two or these variants is that the mRNA, the stability of the mRNA is affected, and one is more labile, and the other is more is stronger, and then this is affecting the protein level. So then the amount of receptors having these subunits is increased or is decreased, comparing one population to the other. So what they did in another paper, in another study, was just take a population of normal people and subject those to fMRI and try to see whether the processing of a face, they were showing a face to these guys, was different in people having the deletion or people having the insertion. And this is the net response. Once, I mean, this is the response induced by this activity. But when you subtract carriers from carriers of the deletion or carriers of the insertion, you can see that the deletion carriers have in the hippocampus, this is the area where the hippocampus in the human brain is. In remember the structure I showed you that Cajal drew very nicely. Seems to be more activity in the hippocampus than the rest of the people. And this called my attention because, you know, this is indicating that just because you are affecting the abundance of a subunit and modifying the abundance of a class of receptor in the synapse is affecting the way in which a very important structure in the brain is processing information. And I think this is very, very interesting. So we then wanted to transfer this idea to an animal model, and this is what we did. So this is, as I said, the neurotransmitter glutamate, which is activating 3 different receptors. One is the kinin receptors in which we are working, and the other are very important receptor, NMDA. We will talk something about, a few things about this receptor. Another is AMPA receptor, which is mediating most of the synaptic transmission in the brain. So what we did was just to increase the number of receptors, of these kind of receptors, in the brain, in parts of the brain, not in the whole brain, parts of the brain, by increasing the expression of this subunit. The subunit encoded by GLIC4, which is called GLUK4, glutamate kinin 4. So let's see what happens. This is because when you have the transgenic mouse there, and how do you call it? I mean, how do you ask the mouse, hey, do you remember well? Do you behave well? Do you feel well? Or what? No? And then there are tricks. And those tricks have been developed for a number of years. And one of the tricks is this. So it's just to ask the mouse how good is in terms of relationship with other partners. So this is the apparatus. It's a 3-chamber apparatus. And then you can put here a mouse in a jail, in a box. And here you can put an empty box. And then you can ask, you put the test mouse here, and then obviously mouse are very curious, and they interact more with the partner than with the empty box, as you can see here. I mean, this is the object, the empty box, and this is the partner, almost double. And in this case, the normal mouse interact more, but the transgenic mouse interact exactly the same. So at that point, this mouse is totally normal. But now, if you put here another mouse, and this is a familiar mouse, the same mouse, then the control mouse try to interact more with another mouse, because, I mean, this guy knows the partner said, you know, who cares? So he's going to see what happened with another mouse. And you can see the quantification. And it's very, very clear the difference between, first, the interaction between nothing and the place where a mouse is, and the novel versus the familiar. But then this is the normal mouse. But if you do it with the mouse overexpressing this subunit, then you see what happened. they interact with the familiar, with the novel, and finally to the same extension. So it's not kind of recognizing the novel from the familiar, or is having a problem with the interaction. But look at this, what happened. The mouse recognizes, interact with the familiar, with the novel, and finally goes to the room where the familiar mouse is and stays in a corner far away from the mouse. And this is a typical behavior of an autistic guy. Typical. They don't like to interact from a social point of view, but if they are forced, they prefer familiar things but far away. Don't force me to interact with you. So we think that this, just by modifying slightly actually, the amount of a gene that is coding for a subunit, which is making one of the receptors that are, of the several receptors making possible synaptic transmission, you are modifying severely the behavior of the mouse, and probably accounting for at least very serious disease like is autism. Although remember that autism is a spectrum, and the source of the causes of autism are multiple. This is maybe not the only one. Actually, when we were doing these experiments, there was a paper finding in a large population of autistic guys, they found they duplicated the segment in which this gene, GRID4 is. So that, has some base to be happening in the normal human population. But I say, what happened inside the brain of this mouse? And then go back to this hippocampus, the dragon by Cajal, and then you can see that what we can do, as I said, this is the input to the hippocampus, and it's activating these granular cells, and these granular cells are activating CA3 cells, and these CA3 cells are activating CA1. So this is called the trisynaptic circuit, and it's a power way of processing information. So if we put an electrode with multiple contacts, then we can record the input to the system and the output to the system, actually, with the same array of electrodes. And this is the kind of electrophysiological signals you can get, and actually this is extracellular recording, so you are not recording now a single cell or a single synapse, but you are recording a hundred of cells which are activated at once. And this is just related with the action potential, the activation of this population of synapse, and this is the trisynaptic EPSP, the trisynaptic, so after being activated here and here and there, so this is the recording that you can just measure. So in living animals, we did that. So these are not the slices, and you see that at the level of the entrance, of the entry, the input is not affected. So you change the intensity of the stimulus that you are activating this pathway, and then the output is exactly the same in the transgenic mouse and in the normal mouse. So if you go at the level, this is the level of the dendrites. If you record at the level of where the axons arise, and then you can record the compound action potential, you see there is no change either. So nothing happens in this place. But if you go to the level of the output, something happened during the processing in that the output now is increased over the control animals. And remember, this is what in the human population somebody saw. The activation of the hippocampus in front of a task or a processing stimulus is increased when this subunit is increased. So we were very happy. This is obviously, this is, allowing to make input-output curves, and you see that the slope is changed. So the gain of the synaptic transmission in the hippocampus is affected just by slightly altering a subunit which is coding for a particular receptor which is situated in a synapse. That means that the behavior can be changed by just modifying slightly some molecules within the brain. So let me tell you another example quickly. These are experiments not done in my group, but I think these are very interesting. And this concerns this other receptor, which is the N-methyl-D-aspartate receptor. Doesn't matter. N-methyl-D-aspartate is a synthetic compound that is allowing to differentiate this NMDA receptor from the other receptors in pharmacological basis. All these receptors are activated by the endogenous neurotransmitter, which is vitamin A. So what they did was just to follow a very similar approach. Obviously not. First, let me tell you, we can delete, with transgenic techniques, we can delete the receptors and generate an animal lacking the receptors in part of the brain. And then interrogate the animal, what is the behavior of this animal, just to check whether this is effective. So this is the case against the hippocampus, and you see that the D receptor, the NMD receptor, has been removed, not in the whole hippocampus, but in a particular area, which is A1. Just in a particular area. The rest of the brain is totally normal. So then we can ask, because the hippocampus is related with memory, we can ask the mouse whether his memory is better or not. How to do that? Another trick. And this is a swimming pool, which is called Morris water maze. Morris is a person alive, and actually he's collaborating in our institute. He belongs to our institute. He has been actually contracted for a number of months by the Severo Ochoa. So he was living, and actually he has a sailboat in Alicante, and he's very famous. He won the Brain Prize recently, which is considered a Nobel Prize of Neuroscience. But it's very interesting. I mean, he developed this maze to test for spatial memory, and this consists, as I see, as a swimming pool in which around the bath you have things just to allow the animal to be spatially localized. So if you then put, this is a fellow, you put the mouse in the water, and the water is milky or dark, whatever, but there is a platform hidden, which is right here. So see what happens, no? So day one, the animal starts exploring the place. And obviously, I mean, we are accelerating this because it takes a few minutes just to find, he finally finds the platform right there and stay there. So, but this is the day 8, you see? I mean, he learned where the platform was. So he acquired some spatial memory, as you can see. It's quite quickly. I mean, it's irrelevant where you put the mice. The mice knows perfectly in the space where the platform is. Quite clever. So this is the quantification. The first session, you see, I mean, about 3 or 4 minutes to get the platform, but the second session is just half, and the fourth session, the mouse knows perfectly where the platform is. So if we subject to this test, the transgenic mouse lacking NMDA receptors, a kind of receptor, in an area of the hippocampus, not in the whole brain. See what happens. Is not able to remember, is not able to learn where the platform is. So that means that the activity of the synapse in that particular place of the brain is affecting the capacity of learning. This is very important. But then the other experiment can be done, no? Rather than removing NMDA receptors, what we can do is just to put more NMDA receptors. And then we can just suppose that we are going to make more clever animals. Animals that are able to learn more and more quickly. Do you think I will put possible? Because I would like to have more NMDA receptors in my brain if this is the case. Well, as you see, I mean, the brain of these animals are totally normal. The spines, the synaptic or dendritic spines are there. There is no alteration, several alterations, except that the receptor is engaged, right? And then let's focus on this test. And then the test is the following. you put the animal in a place and then apply an electric shock. And the animal learns that when you put him in this place, he's going to get an electric shock and then freezes and stays right? And this is the time they are measuring the time that the mouse is frozen when they do not apply any electric shock. So you put the mouse there, and the mouse remembers the context and say, hey, they are going to, you know, they are going to apply me, and they are waiting, and they say, this guy is not going to tell me to do anything, so and then start moving. But like what happened, I mean, this is something that they normal mice acquire, you see, and they this is called extinction memory or whatever. So they stay freezing for less and less time because they realize that nothing happens here. But look what happened with this transgenic mice, which is overexpressing, having more NMD receptors in their brain. First, remember better. They stay for longer, waiting for a shock, because he reminds that there was a shock over there. So this place is a bad place. But afterwards, realizes more quickly that the shock is not coming, and the experimenter is cheating him, and then start moving quickly. So we can say that this guy is clever, much more clever than his partner, right? So what does it mean? We can manipulate the synaptic transmission to improve cognition, to improve memory, or we can manipulate the other way around, to decrease the capacity of remembering, of learning, or to alter that in such a way that we can induce IFIC. So there is a company for a number of years, probably, I mean, I haven't heard nothing else from that company, trying to develop modulator of the receptor just to improve cognition. And, well, suppose, I mean, students, suppose what happened if you could have a pill, and then before the exam, take the pill and try and read something and remember forever. That would be the paradise. So anyway, and let me just tell you a few words about a technique that is revolutionizing this kind of understanding of how circuits, how the activity of neurons modulate the behavior of animals. And these are called optogenetics, and this was based on the discovery of these three guys, particularly Peter Hegeman, that were able to realize that there were algae, microalgae, that were sensitive to light. So you put light, and they went far away from the light. And they said, how an alga can check light if they don't have eyes? And then they screened all the genome of this alga, and then found a protein with a structure compatible with light sensitivity, because the structure was quite similar to rhodopsins that we use to treat these proteins just to check, to be sensitive to light. So they thought, okay, we transfect this, and they realized that there was a channel. So when they expose to light, the channel opens, and then ions flow inside the cell, and then activate the cell. So they thought, okay, we can put these proteins in the membrane of a neuron, then we can control the activity of the neuron by light. And that's what is illustrated here. And this development was done by these three guys, Carl Deiser of the Boyden and Feng Zhang. These guys are going to be, I don't know if these three or these two plus one of these three, Nobel Prize, sooner or later. So as you see, when they apply light, blue light, they activate the neurons. There can be finite action potential. And this is one of the problems of these things, how to put into a neuron these proteins. So the approach is just to pack these proteins in a virus and allow the virus to be the vector to infect neurons, and then allow expression of this channel rhodopsin, this is the name, in specific neurons, because channel rhodopsins can be put under specific promoters, so being activated or being expressed exclusively in cells which are able to trigger the transcription of this channel rhodopsin because of the specific promoter. So the virus can infect many other cells, but if this promoter is not activated, this protein is not expressed, and when you illuminate this part of the brain, you don't get anything. You get just where the proteins, and this is providing selectivity, because you can just use specific promoters being activated by particular neurons, because if there are promoters of proteins being expressed particular time of the development or the life in particular. So specificity, this is important. But the problem to be translated into the from animal to humans is the use of virus. Suppose that we can transfect, put these channel rhodopsins in retinal cells. In those blind people that they don't have, for instance, cells sensitive to light. We can just give back this sensitivity, and actually this is an active line of research, and there are some promising results. Same thing with the ear, and many other things. But let me just show you how this could be translated to understand animal behavior. So this is a mouse which is being recorded. I don't know if you can see it. Each dot is the action potential in a cell. So the cell is reflecting the activity. And you see what happened when somebody put a male in this area. So the cell is very much activated, and there is aggressivity and attack by this mouse, right? Same cell, and then there is some activity of the cell, and then the experimenter is going to put, rather than a male, he's going to put a female. Alright? The neuron stops firing. Right? And then and this neuron has been recorded from a particular area of the brain, which is in the hypothalamus, so it's a nucleus of the hypothalamus, doesn't matter. But then, let's do the following. Now we have this mouse in which we transfected or infected with channel rhodopsins those cells which we were recording in the previous experiment. So that when we apply light through this fiber, the cell is going to be activated, like what happened when the male was there that was generating a receiver. So, and this is a female, obviously. This is a female. So, I mean, this guy do whatever he can. No losing time. But then we are going to activate these cells artificially with light and see what happens. Now the light is on. So love is transformed into war, right? So, I mean, demonstrating that just by studying the activity of neurons, by modulating the activity of neurons, either by changing the number of receptors, the gain of synaptic recognition, or directly activating the particular neurons in the brain, you can change behavior. And this is recapitulating an experiment that in the 60s, Manuel Rodríguez Delgado, maybe is not familiar to you, he was quite famous neurophysiologist. I was working with him for a number of years. Was able to do exactly the same. Rather than applying optogenetic stimulation by applying electric stimulation, in a brake bull, he was able to stop charging, the bull charging. So he said that he was just removing aggressivity. Might be, I don't think so, because at that time we didn't know anything about the neurons controlling aggressivity or aggressiveness or controlling loss, whatever. Now we know much more about that. But what he was able to demonstrate with those kind of rudimentary experiments was that the behavior was possible to modulate. We were able to modulate the behavior just by modulating the activity of the brain. And in the 60s, that was quite pioneering result. So in summary, so what I showed you is that the brain is very complex and is done with systems with increasing level of complexity, from molecules to the systems to networks, whatever. So it's just generating the behavior, and this is something that we have to understand. We are understanding. We have, the understanding of cognition, memory, all these very complex things, in our fingertips. And in a few years, we will be able to understand these things, and probably making one of the dreams of Rodrigo Delgado is he wrote in 1963 a book called Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society, and everybody blamed him as this guy's crazy, he wants to control us with electrodes, whatever. But this is not true. I mean, every day propaganda, marketing things are controlling us, are changing our brain, are changing our mind, are changing our behavior. We like Coca-Cola because, we don't know what Coca-Cola is. We like Coca-Cola because the Coca-Cola company is making us to like Coca-Cola. This is very important, a nice reflection. So in terms of science, this is the kind of promise of molecular medicine in which you detect a brain disease or any disease, then you isolate the gene responsible for this disease, and then you try to make a model in animals, and then you just could study the pathophysiology of the disease, and then try to find the targets or the drugs or the activity or whatever you can modify and get back the normal situation of this organ. Obviously, we need lots of basic science here, and I think if we just interrupt this circuit is totally broken. So, as I said, we still need a lot of work to try to understand this tiny structure in this big head, but we are in the process. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the fascinating presentation. We have time for a few questions.
Are those vesicles that you mentioned that are very important for the connection constantly renovated? Do they move, etc.? I was thinking of the process when you have an idea after thinking a lot about the problem, an insight. There is a kind of flash in your mind that at least I have been detecting that I guess that there must be some chemistry that produces that all these vesicles move or change the properties at the edge.
Yeah, these vesicles, the synaptic vesicles, are continuously being emptied and filled. And actually, the three guys that discovered how they traffic, how they all the proteins that in this trafficking activity are involved, won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago. So this is a very recent thing. And for instance, one of the proteins involved in the trafficking of these vesicles to the membrane is called SNAP25 plasmatic. SNAP25 is cut, is broken by botulinum toxin. So that's why if you get an intoxication with botulinum, you die because you cannot breathe. Because there is no synaptic transmission to the diaphragm and you cannot breathe. Or, this is why, I don't know how it is in English, this disease that you have you cannot put your feet You know, there are children that are pie cabo, it's called in Spanish. So they have to walk in this way. So they inject some bottle in here, and then they relax the muscle because the amount of neurotransmitter is decreased, being released is decreased, and then they recover this. So I mean, the point is that all these vesicles are being renovated, so they are recycled. I mean, in the scheme, they didn't say anything, but they are released, and then there is a system which is cluttering-based recycling system in which the vesicles are recovered from the membrane and they are put in motion again. If this system wouldn't exist, the problem then is that when all the vesicles fuse, the amount of membrane increased so much that could induce a collapse in the system. So you have to have the same system which is increasing the amount of membrane, and then something which is remove this same amount of membrane in order to keep the size of the synapse. I don't know if I will answer the first.
Thank you very much, Juan, for this presentation of fascinating studies. I would like to ask you about the famous arrow of Caja. I mean, the flow of information needs an energy source. We, the physicists, we know very well. And I think it's a very important question. What is this origin of energy that is given for the flow of information that you have in the circuit, in the neuron, okay? In that case? I understand that at the end will be metabolism, but metabolism is a global name. You see, it doesn't mean anything in precise terms. In particular, one question, is the energy source localized or is distributed along the circuit itself? You see, I think these questions are very relevant.
Okay. The flow of information, I mean, is imposed by the structure of the system, independently of the energy. Obviously, when you open a channel and then sodium enters into the cell, toward electrochemical gradient. So this is a passive, totally passive activity. The cell has to recover the initial state because it has to extrude sodium outside to get the gradient constant. In extruding this sodium out is expending a lot of energy because this is done with a pump that is working to the expense of ATP. And this is the point. ATP is the general energetic molecule in the whole body, not only the brain. So there is many ways to get ATP, maybe you know, but in the brain exclusively ATP is coming almost exclusively from glucose. That's why probably in considering the whole body, the amount of energy spent or used by the brain is much higher, maybe 40 or 50% of the whole energy in the body. That's why the brain is using so much energy. So it's just glucose, and this is something important also. If you have extra glucose, your brain is working very nicely. And I put in my institute custom that before seminars, I think it is the same case. You have to give people attending seminars, rather than coffee, sweet things, cakes, all these things, because this glucose is helping the people not to fall asleep. Rather than coffee. So, but the flow of information is imposed not by energy, but because the system is organized in that way. And it's long to it. I mean, I can explain it to you because it's long to explain why the nervous impulse goes one way and not the other. Could be. I mean, the system is totally receptive to that, but the intrinsic properties of the systems allow unidirectionality of the current flow, of the information flow.
And related to that, what is more energy consuming? Thinking or running?
Maybe thinking. So I don't know, I don't have the numbers, but I'm pretty sure that it's thinking. Because thinking is using an extremely large amount of brain or consuming. It's activating a number of brain areas. And this is consuming. This is active. And this is consuming. Even breathing. I mean, when you are breathing, you are activating the visual area, hearing, and whatever. And this is a very active state, and it's consuming. I don't know. I mean, my experience is when I study something, I'm become hungry.
So thank you very much for this very interesting talk. Well, as everyone in this room is very discreet, and I'm sure no one's going to tell anybody, so who's the next Spanish Nobel Prize?
Well, one might be Avelino Corme, no? That's a possibility. But the other, that probably you heard that because he's in the press every day, is Mojica from the University of Alicante, and he's the founder of CRISPR, and CRISPR is a wonderful technique, and it's actually the same problem that I said with the optogenetic, where I put two sets of researchers, the basic researcher who made the fundamental findings, and the others who make the development. So the developers are better recognized than the founders, and actually, I think I can say that. I mean, I nominated them, the 6 of them, to the BBA Frontiers in Knowledge Prize last year. And they awarded the prize to the developers, not to the founders. I was very frustrated and I was complaining forever, but the committee is the committee. So then with the CRISPR, could happen exactly the same with the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize could decide to award, well, I mean, I must say that this year I nominated the CRISPR people to the BBA Frontiers in Knowledge, and they got it. So actually I got a letter from the foundation saying, given your nice record of successes, please keep nominating people. So anyway, and they got it, and including Mojica. So, but if the Nobel Prize doesn't include Mojica in the 3 people being awarded, it would be very, very unfair.
There was a question here. Yes.
They will probably not decide until the court.
Yeah, but this is getting. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are some legal problems with the patents, and maybe the Nobel Prize is just waiting. I mean, they have a list, one of the optogenetic, one of the CRISPR, and many others. But sooner or later will happen.
Thanks a lot for your nice talk. And I was wondering, what does neuroscience nowadays can tell us about the memory? If someone puts in front of me like a square in red and a circle in green, for instance, and then I see the square without a color, I can remember the color. What happens in the brain that some circuits are more stimulated than others? The density of the receptors is increased, or some neurotransmitters.
Okay, I understand. So what is going on inside the brain when you are learning something? Well, we lack a general and comprehensive model of learning, but we have a lot of data about what happened at the cellular molecular level when you learn, and there is a general agreement in that the potency of the synaptic transmission in particular areas of the brain increase. Same thing when you forget, the potency of the synaptic transmission increase, particularly in the hippocampus, which is when the short-term memory is acquired. Afterward, there are a number of transformations also modifying the potency of the synaptic transmission and the number of the synapses. So the number of the dendritic spines increased when you learn, in the long run. In the short run, there is a molecular transformation in the synaptic, in the synapse, in which the number of receptors are increased. These are very nicely described. And even more, next week is visiting me in Alicante, Rick Huaney, who is working for a number of years, 30 years, I know him for a long time, in these processes. And the last thing he found, a paper was published a couple months in Science, was that during sleep, those synapses which has been potentiated during learning get depotentiated, because otherwise those synapses will not be able to learn new things. I think this is a fantastic mechanism telling us what is the role, or one of the roles of sleep. So this is what we know.
Yes, I mean, just for confirmation, from the figure that you showed at the beginning of your talk, it seems that 1/4 of the European population has some brain disorder. Is that true?
Well, no. This is accounting 1/4 is yeah. I don't remember whether this is the it's a 4. Yeah, that's right. It's a 35%. 35%. Maybe a 1/4 of the population with a disease is having a brain disease.
This is not 1/4 of the population.
No. No, it's the sick population. It's the third of the sick population. I said there are more people. We are more people healthy than sick.
Okay, thanks.
You're next.
Well, I have one question and one curiosity. The question is, I have very many friends that has been studying physics and then went to studying neuroscience. I would like to understand which is the role that physicists can do in neuroscience, because your talk seems to deal more with chemistry. So what physicists in your field do?
A lot. By definition, neuroscience is a general discipline in which everybody can get in. So a neuroscientist is anybody interested in finding rules or trying to understand how the brain works. And they can be biologists, physicists, physicians, psychologists, bioinformatics, whatever, everybody. And this is an integrative discipline that was put in motion, I think, by Cajal. And you know, the classical disciplines, physiology, anatomy, have been enriched over the 20th century to create this thing that we call neuroscience. So what is the role of a physicist? Well, I mentioned the patch clamp, and the patch clamp was developed by two persons, as I said, Erwin Neher and Bert Sackman. Bert Sackman is physician, Erwin Neher is physicist. I mentioned the super resolution microscope that obviously can be applied, but this is being applied almost exclusively to the brain. And how's this guy? I don't remember, this German, also physicist. So we have people in our institute studying behavior and trying to find rules and which are the bricks to quantify the behavior and to model the behavior that are physicists. So I mean, you can, and something that I realized because I work with physicists sometimes is that the brain of the physicists are so different from the biologists that when they work together, there is emergent properties that are very well.
Yeah, following up on that question, there's a lot of money flowing into imaging, and techniques are getting much finer. Rather than a few electrodes on a skull, you can get very detailed mappings of which areas in the brain lights up at any point in time. can we actually decode that information? Can we relate those patterns to diseases or to thoughts? Or
we can. Yeah. Yes, we can. No, I was thinking about the brain initiative that Obama put in motion. And actually the goal of the brain initiative is just to develop techniques able to record from a large number of assemblies of neurons, trying to understand how they relate with each other. But there is no other way. I mean, if you get visual stimulation, your visual cortex is activated. If this is somatosensory or whatever other kind of sensory stimulation, other parts of the brain are stimulated. So there is a correlation, and sometimes when you have a deficit of this stimulation, of this sensitivity, you develop a disease. Because your brain is not properly processing the information. So there is a relationship between activity and correct patterns of activity and correct patterns of behavior.
Thanks. Coming back to the question about thinking and mechanism. So it is assumed that people think using words or concepts, and so the way of thinking, for example, of Japanese people or Russian or Arabic people is different from ours, for example, because we use concepts that are very related. So there is a possibility that there are some differences in the brain of a Japanese or a Spanish because they have grown thinking differently.
I think it's absolutely clear. And I can tell you an experiment that this was done in the United States. The brain has a spectacular property, which is plasticity. So the brain stops maturation, anatomical maturation, when we are 21. So, I mean, the brain is being modified completely. Our brains, your brains, are not going to be the same than when you came in. Because now you have accumulated information. And there will be another spine or a new process or whatever that has been grown in your brain. So the brain are modified by the epigenetics, by the environment, by anything. So there was an experiment in the United States in which, using fMRI and answering during monitoring the brain activity, a number of questions, the machine was able to separate people, voters of Clinton, from voters of Bush. So that means that people from the left and from the right have different brains. Cannot be other way. So if you are in Russia, your brain is slightly different than if you are in another place, because you are storing information which is not the same. Process. The basic processes are the same, but the structure of the brain can be slightly modified. The only thing you have to go is just to go deep inside now to find the differences. But your brain and my brain are totally different because they are plastic. So Cajal said that more than 100 years ago that one can build his own brain if he wants, and actually that could be. It's like a muscle, and actually he recommended brain gymnastics to keep alive or in better shape. And even more, I mean, there are some statistics in that people went to the university at the age of 63 or 60, they got 75 times less possibilities to develop Alzheimer than lay people. So that means that the brain activity is making your brain more active, and then if your brain is more active, it's keeping more healthy and probably more robust. And I wouldn't say bigger, because this is just in our school. No, it's not possible to grow, but more rich. And there are more experiments. I mean, there was a Spanish, still alive, a Spanish scientist that in the 60s also, he took kittens, cats, and after birth, he closed an eye, and the other eye was open. And after 1 month, 2 months, he made histology of the visual cortex, and the eye is projecting to the other side, and the right eye is to the left. So one of the cortices was totally underdeveloped, and the other was not. So that means that external information is building the brain. So, and that's why, and this is another lesson. So that is very interesting, because normally when you have a baby, you keep the baby quiet under darkness, just because the baby is asleep. You say, don't chat because blah, blah. Mistake. You have to put music, you have to put light, etc., just to enrich all these plastic properties of the child. This is some lessons, no, for knowing what happened in the brain, or what happened in the brain when the brain is being developed, and the plastic properties, etc. Same thing with education. You were
I had a curiosity related to something that we've been seeing here a couple of months ago. What happens if you put the electrode into the female mouse brain?
Exactly the same. Probably. I don't know. Well, I cannot tell you. I haven't done this experiment. But it should be. So let's see. Are you asking me where are the brain centers for stimulating female?
I understand the opposite. If also the female mouse brain stop activity when it's.
I mean, the basic mechanisms and the role of the different nuclei in the brain are exactly the same for male and female. So the female are more because they are exposed to hormones. I mean, the females are very rich in hormones. They change, every month. And actually, this complicates the study of the brain in females. And actually, we know much more on neuroscience of males than in females, because we avoid to use females. Because degrees of freedom. That's the problem. Something which cannot be controlled. And there is an issue now. When you send a paper to publish, they request sometimes that you have to use males and females. I mean, in that sense, men or male are much more simpler than females, for sure.
Thank you very much for your talk. And I was curious, is this new behavior something learnable? Or
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is this new behavior something learnable, or does the mouse have a tendency to make love to the female and not war?
Well, I mean, I'm an optimistic person, so the rule is that if you have a strange in your environment, you try to fight this, because the mice are territorial. So you do exactly the same. The only thing is that you have a kind of a very well-developed cortex, neocortex, the prefrontal part that is making you human, and then you can rationalize that you don't have to kill anybody or to hit anybody because he's approaching you. Right? But if you go to the subway and you enter in one of these wagons and there are 4 people, you will see that the 4 people are situated or placed maximizing the distance between people. And you are just enhancing or delimiting your area, and when this is a rush hour, your area is just reduced because you are a rational man, or you are a rational animal, per se. So, but that, I mean, lions and mice don't understand these things. So, if you get an intruder, you are an intruder, they hit you, they fight you. So, but an answer, we have a bad brain or a good brain, right? This is one of the, in a sense, your questions. I think that the brain has been designed to optimize evolution, to optimize success. And obviously, killing people around is not a very good way to succeed. So, I think the tendency is to make love and to spread genes rather than to kill somebody.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.